Say yes to new beginnings.
Yes.
Say yes to new standards of excellence.
Yes.
Say yes to engaging reportage with a difference.
Yes.
Introducing Yes International Magazine.
So far, what has been your fondest memory as a broadcaster?
I think I'll probably have to go back down memory lane, as you put it. I think I would have to go back to the time when Nigeria hosted the Festival of Arts and Culture, and that's a long, long time ago. That was in 1977, Festac 77. It was, for me, it was a very, very exciting time. A studio was created at the National Theatre, the main bowl of the National Theatre, the basement. There was a studio there, and we ran programs from that basement for the entire 1 month of Festac 77. So we ran discussion programs, we ran news bulletins. It was just an exciting time. People came from all over Africa, and of course we had black people from other parts of the world also coming in, and it was just a great time. It was a great time. I enjoyed it, yeah. And I started the broadcast. I opened the broadcast for Festac 77, which was also something that was totally unexpected and exciting. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, what was broadcasting like in your time compared to what we are currently witnessing?
I think there was probably generally I think there was probably much more supervision, much more one supervision in the early days than there is now.
No.
I know there are some stations where some of the personnel, the senior personnel, are very, very particular, but that's not the general trend. In those days, anyway, to be fair, there were we had fewer stations. There was a smaller number of people to supervise. But having said that, our bosses were very, very particular. I remember that we had, in the announcer's booth in those days, we had this telecom system. We had two buttons. One was green, one was red. So if that red button began to flash, then you knew that you were in trouble. Somebody was listening. If they were not in their offices, they were at home, because the system was set up where our bosses, could actually reach the announcer's booth from their homes. So if the green light is on, no problem. It's just maybe an information that is being passed on to you. But if it's a red light, then get ready. And if that red light flashes too many times, you're out. You're suspended until you've sorted yourself out, and they are sure that you're not likely to make those same mistakes again. So the supervision was something that was very, very key at that time.
Okay.
Yes. I have thought about creativity. I've given that some thought, were we more creative in those days than we are now? I have not been able to really answer that question because we have different. We're in a different situation. We have different opportunities. Technology is totally different. So if I say that in those days we had to think out of the box, it is true, but then we still have to think out of the box now, even with all the technology that is available to us. So I think, in fairness, I don't think the level of creativity has dwindled. It's just it perhaps our focus has maybe shifted, okay, into different different paths. But one thing is constant for those who really regard broadcasting as their profession. The passion has not abated. Yeah, the passion is still there.
Interesting. Oftentimes, you get categorized, alongside others like Ruth Benemesi or Pierre, CNL, Brown, and co as the golden girls, of the NTA. What fond memories, or what I mean, just one remarkable thing you can tell us, about those good old days at NTA. Can you remember one, or I mean?
I think the thing that stands out most for me is that if you were an outsider, or even if you were a member of staff and you came into the newsroom, you would never really know who was on duty until 9 o'clock, when it would be obvious because whoever was on duty was on air. The friendship, I think, I will use that word, the friendships and the associations and the camaraderie that I think we shared, even if you were off duty, even when you were off duty, you were still there. That's one of the things that I think I can say I remember very, very well. It wasn't possible for you to tell who was on the news and who wasn't until 9 o'clock.
Interesting. Now, back then you used to be very, very active compared to now. So what are the things you do to keep yourself busy, engaged? How do you spend your time, now, these days?
Well, I should ask you a question.
All right.
And that question is simply this: what makes you think that I am no longer active?
Well, okay, let me answer the question like a typical Nigerian. Because I no longer see you reading the news. So I assume.
Okay. Well, then, so my answer to that would be that life does not begin and end
You reading the news.
with being a news anchor. It doesn't. Anyway, I'm as busy now, I think, as I have ever been. I keep myself occupied. I write. I train. And in fact, in recent times, I've just finished recording 13 episodes of a new program for TV.
Okay. What's the program called?
It's called Strictly Speaking with Bimbo.
Strictly Speaking with Bimbo.
Yes.
All right. So what's the program about?
I wrote a couple of books.
Okay.
And each of them begins with that term, strictly speaking. And so I developed a program based on the idea behind those books.
Interesting.
So I've been pretty busy, actually.
Interesting. Interesting. Now, at some point, you moved over, or you crossed over, or you joined Channels Television, only to later quit after some time. What exactly happened?
Yes, I was invited by well, now he's the chairman. He at that time he wasn't. I was invited by Mr. John Momo, or Dr. John Momo as he is now. I think it was 2002, and I was with Channels for about 13 years actually as a news anchor. Before I stopped anchoring the news, I had been training the presenters and producers. I decided it was it 2015? Yes, 2015 that I stopped anchoring the news. I felt that I wanted to do something a bit different, and I was also in a situation where my husband was not very well, and so it became important for me to take time, spend time, looking after him. So when I stopped anchoring the news, at that point, I had actually been in broadcasting for 40 years. And I thought that I should, as I said, I should take a break and move on to something else. I did not leave Channels. I still have not left Channels. There is an academy. Channels has an academy, and I'm an instructor at the Channels Academy. So I'm still affiliated to Channels
Television.
Yes, it is simply that I have not been in front of the camera.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, talking about
that will soon change.
okay, okay, I like that. That will soon change. I like that. I like that. Now, talking about your darling husband, Mr. Tunde Oloyede, how has life been, without him by your side, beside you, before you, and behind you?
Yeah. Well, he was a man who had a huge sense of humor. He could find humor in virtually everything. So you can imagine that to go from a situation where somebody is making amusing comments, making you laugh, to, well, let me say silence, because that's what it was. The change is quite dramatic. But I do have a lot of memories. There are a lot of things that we had in common. And he was a TV producer. So I remember those times, and a lot of the things that I think I learned from him, I'm still able to use. I'm still able to put into practice right now. And at least 2 of my children are very interested in production. So in a way, he's still around, because quite often when I see them, I see the work that they do. I hear the conversations that they have, and the conversations that we have. Truly, the legacy is alive. It's more than a legacy. Yeah, it's more than a legacy.
Interesting. So,
Yeah.
what do you normally miss about him? What do you miss most about him?
Oh, his sense of humor. his sense of humor, and his he was a very forthright person, very, in fact, I could say a very blunt person. So sometimes some of the remarks that he made, and he was not afraid of telling people to their faces what he thought about any given situation. So he was a blunt person, and some interesting scenarios resulted from his bluntness and from his shall I say, his reluctance to keep some of his thoughts to himself.
Interesting.
Yeah.